We're gonna keep dissecting the current Arc subclass we have to try to predict Arc 3.0. Today we're focusing on the Warlock. We already did one for the Hunter, but this time it's probably not just gonna be 2 minutes. So let's just do a quick recap on why we're doing this. Since Void 3.0 and Solar 3.0 came out in back-to-back seasons, it's very likely that Arc 3.0 will come out in the upcoming season. So far they usually follow the same pattern. They keep the same supers, make all the grenades available to all the characters, and then just a few changes to the melee or new melee, and then they do some class ability changes. The other thing they do is they add things like Scorched or Ignition or Volatile like they did for Solar and Void. For Arc, the first thing we're going to try to do is imagine what that new ability that's coming out is going to be like. That's going to be like a Scorched or an Ignition, but Arc. So what kind of lightning ability, electrocution ability is going to pop up? Just think about that for a second. It's pretty much impossible to actually guess what it would be, but that's not going to stop us from giving it a try. But if you have any thoughts on what this could be next season, type that in the comment section below, because I'd like to hear what you guys thought about before you hear my own opinion. So let me share my thoughts. The inspiration that I got came from two weapons, Thunderlord and Trinity Ghoul. And the names that I thought of for what the abilities could be called, or the perks, whatever you want to call it, are Electrocute and Thunderstrike. Electrocute basically is going to chain lightning like the Trinity Ghoul while you have the buff, while Thunderstrike is more like Thunderlord, basically, where you get this striking thunder from the air on all the enemies, similar to what Cloud Strike does as well. Now, do I think these abilities will be really strong, especially for ad clear in PvE, and only God knows what would happen with something like this in PvP, but Restoration 2x exists in the game right now and everybody's fine, so I'm gonna keep thinking wild. So we've spoken about possible new class perks. Let's get into some things we actually know for the Warlock. We have 3 separate trees right now, and I'll peek on some of the nodes in the current subclass and explain how these could translate into Arc 3.0. Starting with the melee, we have Chain Lightning, Ball Lightning, and Rising Storm. Chain Lightning is a regular melee that applies Electrocute, which chains lightning to nearby enemies. Ball Lightning, instead of a direct melee, launches an arc projectile towards an enemy that then does damage when it hits it. Rising Storm is a regular melee but applies an effect that charges your super grenade and melee energy at the same time once you connect. If there is a third perk that comes with Arc, let's call it Charged. Shout out to Anime for this idea, by the way. If it causes ability regen for some of our abilities, then we could have 3 melees as our main options for the Warlock, including this one that has this special perk. One will give Electrocute, one will give Charged, and one will give the Thunderstrike. I think it'll be crazy if that happens, but it'll be fun to be able to decide what kind of melee you would choose to use. Now, moving on to the supers, most people are familiar with these, especially if you play PvP. We have Transcendence, Chaos Reach, and Landfall. Chaos Reach is the beam of lightning that is good for damage. Landfall basically decimates everything around you when you cast your super, and Transcendence gives you a longer super if your grenade and melee are fully charged and heals you when you cast it. With the way the new subclasses are set up, I don't think the Transcendence is gonna work exactly the way it is now. They're probably either gonna remove it or change it a little bit. But what will be more interesting about these supers is if we get Ionic Blink, which is your ability to blink like you have on the Void while you're in your supers, and if Bungie would allow this to work for all the super options that we have. If it does, imagine blinking while you're doing Chaos Reach. That would be really good. So now let's get into some of the aspects. There's no doubt in my mind that one of the aspects will provide Arc Souls, and I think it would stay tied to Rifts, because if it doesn't stay tied to that and you could just use your grenade, for example, that would take away the function of Getaway Artist. So I think it's gonna stay in the game as an aspect, but it's also going to be tied to the Rift so that Getaway Artist could stay relevant. By the way, I think Getaway Artist is going to be a really good exotic next season, and I'm saying that because if it's possible for us to use that exotic to get Arc Souls while we have 2 other aspects that we could still take advantage of, it'll make it almost a must use so that you could have all 3 aspects in one, because that always feels really nice. for example, being able to use the fragment in Void 3.0 that gives you Devour, and then you don't have to run Devour on your Warlock or even play a Warlock at all, because you can get Devour on all 3 characters. Which just makes me think, imagine if you could get Arc Souls on Hunters and Titans. I don't think that's gonna happen, but just what if that was the case? Also, in addition to that, let's get something that's more realistic. On Solar 3.0 right now, we have Ember of Empyrean, which basically allows us to extend the duration of Radiant and Restoration while we have it. Well, if they have something similar to this for Arc Souls on Arc 3.0, where you're able to extend the duration of the Arc Souls just by getting kills from your Arc weapons or Arc abilities, I think that would be really dope, and maybe they'll bring that into the new season. Now, the next aspect, I got this idea from the node called Arc Web. Enemies damaged by your grenade chain deadly lightning to nearby enemies. Each grenade or melee chain returns grenade energy. This ties well into the electrified perk I discussed earlier, so the aspect would basically allow you to activate that electrified perk. Next up, we have Ionic Trace. Defeating enemies has a chance to create Ionic Trace, and collecting them grants energy to all your abilities. Now, I don't think this would stay the same way in Arc 3.0, it'll probably change to Arc Kills, so from your abilities or your weapons will grant these Ionic Trace. So to finish up with this theory crafting session, let's talk about Pulse Wave and Electrostatic Surge. These are 2 monodes in the Arc subclass tree. Both grant movement buffs, which makes me think there might be a lot of movement introduced into the new Arc 3.0. Bigger than everything that we've thought about today, maybe there's going to be a lot of things that allow us to move really quickly. Right now on Void, we have something where if you crouch, you're able to sneak around faster and things like that. But I think with Arc 3.0, they're just going to make it so that no matter what you do, if you have some aspects, some fragments, something like that, there's going to be some enhanced movement, because there's a relationship between the whole lightning idea and Arc. So Pulse Wave grants a movement buff when you're critically wounded, and Electrostatic Surge grants a movement buff while you're near allies, while recharging your rift quicker and making your rifts last longer at the same time. This seems like it's going to make for a really good fragment, probably one of the stronger fragments if it's a fragment instead of an aspect, but allowing something like this to transfer to like Hunters and Titans would be really cool if Bungie did it. So my people, I know I did short segments for the Hunter, but when I looked at the Warlock, there was just so much exciting stuff to talk about. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see y'all on the next video. Peace. Or no, you have a point.